Old Glory was waving over Waco's compound. You could see evil spirits as they circled around. ATF said to Reno, you planned this so well, give us the order and we'll blow to hell. Janet smiled proudly as she faced her first test. She bragged Clinton chose her because she was the best. She gave the order, the tanks showed no grace, punching holes in the buildings for their deadly spray. Who will tell the little children their government was wrong? The Republic of Texas should have cared for her own. There was no justice, the law had been used, their weapons were legal, there was no child abuse.
America's Judgment, Part 2. Enemy troops, both foreign and domestic, law enforcement and military merged together. Now you'll have to remember that the enemy troops that came to Waco and destroyed those innocent families did not come from a foreign country. They were, for the most part, our fellow Americans. And the proof lies in the equipment that was there also. This is our U.S. military equipment on the soil adjacent to the Branch Davidians' home. But it didn't just start there. It didn't just start in northern Idaho. It started a long time ago, and we'll go into that now. The New Times, Volume 7, Number 13, November 19th, 1975, says this: More Than Just a Game, The Cable Splicer Papers by Ron Rittenauer. The introductory remarks, I'll share a few of them here. What are the Cable Splicer Papers? A collection of until now secret California National Guard documents that outline an elaborate mechanism to quell domestic dissidents by means that include the imposition of martial law. Now we'll skip over, if I can find my pen here, we'll skip over to the top of this column. Over 4,000 military, police, and select civil servants have been trained as instructors in this course. The course also emphasizes the collection of political intelligence, includes instructions on manipulating the press and thereby public opinion. How come that doesn't surprise me? Description of the papers. I'll skip down to here. A massive secret paper directly connected to the Army's Garden Plot Master Plan for Civil Disturbance Control, of which Cable Splicer is only one subplan awash in the depths of the nation's bureaucracy. A few of the code names other than Cable Splicer have been discovered, such things as Rancher 3, Orbit West, Orbit Red, Upland Victor, Upland 567, Steep Hill, Graham Metric, Quiet Town, Cabin Cruiser, Lantern Spike, and Cab Fare. All states, according to Colonel Zane Cordum, Deputy Director of the Directorate of Military Support, or DOMS, were encouraged to use the cable splicer technique for training purposes. The encourager of DOMS that they used is called money. Cable Splicer 1 was conducted in California May of 1968, barely a month after the Army's task group became the Directorate. Cable Splicer 2 was a bigger affair. It began in February 10 of 1969 with the Governor's Orientation Conference and the kickoff for a series of joint military police training sessions across the state of California. This occurred under Governor Reagan before he became president. Cable Splicer 3 happened in May of 1970. Every National Guard headquarters now has an Emergency Operations Center. Each EOC boasts a full-time staff using multiple lines of communication to the Pentagon's domestic war room. I didn't know we had one. With access to the computerized intelligence systems. The Cable Splicer 3 conference met just 3 weeks after National Guard troops shot and killed students at Kent State and Jackson State. How the Army brought the war home. The Master Police Military Joint Planning and Operations cannot be called a plot or be dismissed as merely the ravaging or ravings of a few coup d'etat crazed colonels and their flipped-out Minutemen supporters. It is far too massive, involving far too many people in far too many official positions. Its implementation has been and remains far too much a matter of official policy, secret official policy. Cable splicer seeds produced military police training specializing in political indoctrination, SWAT training, and the development of a corps of police and military officers with common doctrines, experiences, and intimate knowledge of each other's organizations, and one very special skill, the imposition of martial law. After we'd done our last videotape called Enemies Foreign and Domestic, we had received a letter from a man in the other side of Washington State on the West Coast. He said he was a motor pool driver for the Army when he was in Germany, and he related a number of things to me, and I got him to put it in writing with the okay that I could use it to the public. This is one of the trips that he was sharing with me as he drove an officer, and I'll start out right here on page 4. If I could keep my mouth shut, he would like to take me into the meeting with him and then ask my opinions and views afterwards. I told him I would be very honored and promised my oath of silence. He said if I didn't follow his instructions to the letter, we would both go to the stockade and he would have me done away with. The guard to our left looked hard at me. The officer said simply, "My driver is to stay with me." Both guards saluted. As the door opened, the officer, without saying a word, who was behind me and to my right, put his hand on my right shoulder and pushed me to the left side of the door against the wall. He continued on into the large room that was dark except for the far wall that was covered by a large lighted detailed map of the 7 major landmasses of our planet. In the light from the far wall, I could see the room was filled with brass, lots of big brass, officers. I became apprehensive. The officer disappeared in the crowd. The speaker at the far wall began his presentation. No one else in the room spoke. The speaker began to describe each landmass, starting with Europe. He described political, social, civil, economic, industrial, human, and other concerns of each landmass and region as it related to the taking over and control of each area. As he moved to each new landmass, I became aware that he was describing the complete taking over of this countries to be overseen by one agency. I didn't understand how this could be done or how one group would get it past the people. I couldn't understand how any one of you would accept this. For me, it meant that we were going to have horrific worldwide population genocide and reduction, termination, murder of anyone who resists. The speaker then said in one of his statements that groups or individuals who resisted would be openly executed. The speaker then demonstrated how control techniques would be developed by subduing the smaller countries first, then moving to the larger ones. I thought maybe I was seeing some sick mock battle plan when the speaker at one point said the United States would be the last to be taken over, and then by one step at a time, so as to allay suspicions or minimize and control any reactions to the imposed control before the program was completed. As the speaker began to conclude his presentation before the lights came on, my officer appeared in front of me and ushered me out the door into the bright light of the hallway without a word. I was mentally numb. The year was 1964. Now, quoting from Special Warfare, Professional Bulletin of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center, it's the April 95 issue, Volume 8, Number 2. On page 3 and 4 we find this. In 1878, Colonel Lewis Merrill, a West Point graduate of 1855, deployed part of his unit in 12-man detachments. Their mission to chase and destroy armed terrorists or rebels. They used local law enforcement. Who knew the area of operation. This military action destroyed civilian organizations which were labeled as terrorists. This occurred in South Carolina. Now, this is a military training manual for officers. It's about 1.25 inches thick. It's from Norwich University. Peacemaking, Peacekeeping, and Coalition Warfare, the Future Role of the United Nations. Going inside the cover, we find this. It's a 1994 issue, National Defense University, Fort Leslie J. McNair, Washington, D.C. On page 131, I'd like to share this with you. The military preoccupation with target destruction rather than target arraignment presents a serious obstacle in their conversion to law enforcers. Now this is our military we're talking about, or what we thought was our military. From the Navy Times, the Marine Corps edition, we find this: going downtown, the Marines learned the art of urban patrolling. From another document, it says tactical tracking operations for police, military, and corrections special response teams. Going into the document, we find this: the material is classified not for public disclosure. Oops. It says the hunt for illegal survivalist or militia groups. The special topics addressed in this module: observation and surveillance, long-range patrolling, pursuit or sting operations, search and rescue, right-wing survivalist and militia movements. They really believe the lies that the media has been telling them, don't they? It's too bad they don't do their own investigation. This is the emergence of the militaries of the world together. Soviet general officers at National Defense University as guests of the Secretary of Defense with their red bands and all. Now our troops and the Soviets are rubbing shoulders even more so here. The caption under the picture says, "The combined American-Russian quick reaction force boards a Russian Mi-8 helicopter before a mission." It shows it flying over what appears to be a barricaded area. An Mi-8 circles a checkpoint threatened by a crowd of belligerents. Gee, I wonder if I'm in that picture. In this picture, it shows U.S. General Nash rubbing shoulders with a Russian general by the name of Yevgensky, which is a KGB Spetsnaz specialist, which would be equivalent to the assassination teams that roamed foreign countries from America, called the Phoenix Project. Now, from the Commercial Appeal, Memphis, Tennessee, March of last year, about a year ago, we find this: up in the sky, it's no attack, it's the Marines. Quoting from this paragraph here, I know it's very difficult to read, but the exercise gives the high-tech 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit practice in navigating city skies and maneuvering above city buildings with infrared sensors, night vision goggles, and electronic surveillance. Marine Expeditionary Units have trained in cities such as Atlanta, Los Angeles, Miami, and San Francisco, and I might add so many more. Let me show you one of the so many more that's been lied to here. This was in the news just recently. The Charlotte Observer, Thursday, March 6, 1997. The invasion of the 3rd Ward. About 100, and they're lying about that too, 100 Army Special Operations troops descended on Uptown for a secret drill. 12 helicopters, including Special Blackhawks, swooped in Tuesday evening. Charlotte residents, rattled by hovering helicopters and noise that sounded like explosions, flooded police and city officers with complaints. Another Uptown training exercise scheduled for Wednesday night was canceled. And now the mayor of the city is in big trouble. He didn't tell anybody. It was his private little secret. So you got to ask, folks, what are your public servants doing behind your back? The Army misled Charlotte on a scope of drill, officials say. The mayor, Mayor Pat McCrory, said the Army misled him about the scope and drill when officers met with him in December. Now this is March, that's 4 months later. Other city officials said they knew nothing at all. Why did he keep them in the dark? What else was going on behind our backs? Now this is quoting again from that John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Bulletin. To learn from the past, we must anticipate the future. And the future will be dominated by a single overwhelming presence, the United Nations. Now what happens when local law enforcement come to raid a family? They usually bring overwhelming force, so the family or whoever they're raiding has no thoughts of even trying to defend themselves. Now that's basically what it's saying here. Now that, from the standpoint of safety or not getting bullets flying back at them, is a good plan. However, that's what's being used here. The future will be dominated by a single overwhelming presence, the United Nations. Now this is from a newsletter called The Resistor. It's the official publication of the Special Forces Underground. This is way back in the autumn of '94. The New World Order Combat Arms Survey, question number 46. I would fire upon U.S. citizens. This is what they have to say. Now that was a genuine military questionnaire that started in at least 1987 that we're aware of in Germany. The resistor has been eliciting responses to the questionnaire for the past year. Frighteningly, among service members with less than 10 years of service, 63% agree or strongly agree with question 46. I would fire upon U.S. citizens who refuse or resist confiscation of firearms banned by the U.S. government. Among new recruits, almost 90% give the response, if it's the law and they order me to do so, I guess it's okay. Our federally controlled public schools have done their job. Of those with more than 15 years of service, 87% replied disagree or strongly disagree. Response by members of Special Forces Underground were unprintable. Basically, there will not be many officers who give that order more than once. Let's hope we can count on them for that. Now, this is what the questionnaire looks like. This is questions 32 through 46. Every single one of the questions from at least this point, from 32 through 46, have United Nations in them under some format to find out where our troops' hearts really are. Are they with the U.S. sovereignty or are they with the global grabbers? And from that point on, they're screened and put in various positions. Now this is from Fort Lewis, Washington, just this last fall. It's a Humvee, which is a military vehicle, unless the civilians have $70,000 to pay for them. The curious thing about this one is it's white in color. It says UN on the side, and it says military police down below that. This is just last fall in Tacoma, Washington area at Fort Lewis. Now we were ever so happy when we discovered that our troops would not be under the UN in the operation over there in Bosnia, until we realized that the NATO operation is under UN. According to Americans for America Incorporated, in April 4th of 1949, NATO, which means the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was signed with member groups agreeing that the treaty should be within the framework of the United Nations. The NATO treaty document refers specifically to the UN in the preamble. The parties to this treaty reaffirm their faith in the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. So Warsaw is part of the pact, the UN is, or the NATO is part of the pact. It's all a happy little peacekeeping force today. Now this is from Handgun Control Incorporated. It says confidential, so we'll be sure to share it. The notes and minutes for meetings of Friday, December 17th, 93. A rough draft proposal for internal memo and 5-year plan. Distribution, wow, why didn't we know that? The White House. Let me show you what they were up to way back then. This is on page 9. The total elimination of arms from society. We cannot survive into the 21st century unless we remember the need to expand our wave to new thinking, to the total disarmament of America. With much of the public disarmed, we can become more like Great Britain. The difference this time will be blue coats instead of red coats, I suppose. When we can also eliminate the need for much of our police to be armed. How are they going to feel to be bobbies like Great Britain and get beat up by children? This will take a long time. However, a concentrated public relations campaign can pressure local law enforcement to give up their arms when the time comes. What happens to the pressure from our side? Are we putting pressure on to put America back together or let the grabbers get it all? This is from the Department of Treasury, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Washington, D.C. An open letter to all state and local law enforcement officials. The purpose of this letter is to provide information to all state and local law enforcement agencies regarding one specific aspect of the recently enacted Omnibus Consolidated Appropriations Act of '97. To make it unlawful for any person convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, I said misdemeanor, to ship, transport, or possess or receive firearms or ammunition. It also makes it unlawful for any person to sell or otherwise dispose of a firearm or ammunition to any person knowing or having reasonable cause to believe that the recipient has been convicted of such a misdemeanor. That's quite open. How do we determine that? This new prohibition does apply to all law enforcement officers. So what will it be next time? Instead of misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, will it be a parking ticket? Failure to yield right away? Where will they draw the line on us this time? And it's signed by John W. McGraw, the director of the BATF. But we've done such a good job this year of getting new politicians in there to do a job for we the people finally, They're coming out with new bills already in 1997. The Handgun Registration Act of 97. The 105th Congress, first session, H.R. 186, January 7th of 97. Short title. This act may be cited as the Handgun Registration Act of 97. Federal handgun registration system to apply in all states, not establishing state handgun regulation system that meets certain requirements. There they go, stepping on the 9th and 10th Amendments again that they swore an oath to uphold, these global grabbers. Going into the document a little further, we find this, a definition of serious violation. Multiple unregistered handguns. The violation consists of the violator possessing, owning, or controlling 2 or more unregistered handguns. Boy, am I in trouble. B, unregistered handgun is of higher caliber. The caliber of any handgun which is the subject of the violation is greater than 22. What do they call a 45? A cannon? Yeah. But the penalties are not very severe here, folks, not to worry. Whoever knowingly violates subsection A will be fined not more than $250,000 or imprisoned not less than 15 years or both. The court shall not suspend a sentence of imprisonment imposed for an offense under this section and shall not impose a probationary sentence for any offense under this section. Now they're dictating to the courts also. So what's it all about? Firearms. Certain firearms are now prohibited in Victoria. During this amnesty, July 2, 96 to September 30 of 97, compensation will be paid for semi-automatic, center fire and rim fire rifles, semi-automatic and pump-action shotguns. Surrender and compensation. As a result of the Australian Police Minister Council meeting on May 10th of 96, the Victorian government will proclaim new firearm regulations October 1 of 96. Let me just show you some of the guns on the list. This is page 1 of 16 pages of gun grabbing. It says the type and then the price they're paying for the used or new. An AK-47 old copy used, they're paying $1,485. New, $1,800. Maybe we ought to haul some of our scrap iron over to Australia so we can buy firearms here. FNFAL 308, $2,490 used. They don't even show a new price. M1 Garand 308, $1,750. A Ruger Mini 14 Ranch Rifle, $750 used, $975 new. They want them pretty bad, don't they? But this hasn't just started. This is 1994, H.R. 5904. Bear in mind, however foreign countries go is how America goes. 5 years ago, they registered the firearms in Canada, including the Barrett Light 50s. Today, they're chopping them up. 1994, H.R. 5904, an act to make unlawful the possession of sniper weapons, sponsored, of course, by Mr. Schumer and 50 of his cronies. This act may be cited as the Sniper Prevention and Firearms Collection Act. It shall be unlawful for a person to manufacture, transfer, or possess a sniper class weapon. What does that mean? The definition of a sniper class weapon is this. Defined herein as any single-shot bolt-action rifle of greater caliber than .22. Further defined as any firearm or type replicas or duplicates of the firearms known as Ruger, Winchester, Remington, Marlin, H&H, Ithaca, Weatherby, or other current bolt-action long guns greater than .22 caliber. Any long gun with a barrel length greater than 15 inches. Well, that'd get me twice on some of mine then. Any weapon deemed by law enforcement to be a viable sniper weapon. What's that, a slingshot? And the penalties. A person who knowingly violates Section 1018 and 1024 shall be fined not more than $25,000 and imprisoned not more than 18 years or both. Now shifting gears just a little bit here, this is from John F. Kennedy Special Warfare again. 5th Special Forces must exploit the emerging technology of non-lethal weaponry, including lasers, microwaves, sound waves, light waves, electromagnetic impulses, microbes, chemical, and even computer viruses. Well, there was a helicopter shot down. We thought it was shot down, but it wasn't. The crew that was in it was fried, burned. There was no fire inside. Their hair was still the same color. Their flight suits were not burned at all. yet when they crashed, their bodies had giant gashes in them with no blood. We believe this was microwave done to a president's helicopter as an experiment. We hear that they've moved this experimental field out to Bend, Oregon now from the Washington, D.C. area. Anyhow, going into a national defense news magazine way back in October of '93, I would like to share a few things here. On page 25, non-lethal devices slice across the science spectrum. Emerging devices offer alternatives to death-dealing weapon systems. A range of non-lethal anti-personnel devices that possess applications for law enforcement, special operations forces, and larger tactical campaigns are being exploited by U.S. military. Non-lethal systems also are being aimed at disabling sensor systems, communications, computers, air, sea, and ground vehicles, and enemy weapons. Non-lethal technology are receiving increasing scrutiny by Department of Defense, federal and local law enforcement agencies, and industry providers. These weapons, possessing both defensive and offensive capabilities, are expanded to profoundly alter the conduct of conventional conflicts. Among these emerging weapons are devices that incapacitate enemy forces or hostile personnel by temporarily blinding, it's not temporary folks, disorientating, making them violently ill, or putting them instantly to sleep. Infrasound devices, very low sound generators, are capable of causing disorientation, vomiting, and spastic bowel contractions. Adjusted to a more intense signal, infrasound is capable of disintegrating concrete. Well, if they can do that to concrete, what can they do to we the people? Now, a half a dozen years ago, they were called non-lethal weapons, cutting cars in half, melting man and his weapon together. This was in an operation called Just Cause in Panama, where 26,000 of our finest raided innocent civilians, unarmed civilians I may add, at midnight, December 19th, 1989, killing up to 4,000 of them, 2,504 according to the UN. Burning their homes block after block and burying them in common graves, at least 15 common graves. All of this done under Southern Command. We believe to open the door for even more drug runs to come up from South America. We believe that after Noriega was taken out of there, that the drug running doubled since his removal. Several months afterwards, it was more than double when he was there. So our military personnel, I would assume for the most part, don't know, but there are those in power that certainly do know. Thank you, folks.
They're still in your country, take it back. Politicians are corrupt, that's a fact. They gave you socialism when they stole your Constitution. Before they steal your guns, take it back. They're still in your country, take it back. Federal government is your enemy, that's a fact. They sold you down the river when they stole your gold and silver. Before they steal your guns, take it back. They're still in your country, take it back.